Hey guys, welcome.
How's it going, man?
It's going all right. How about you?
I'm just sitting here living the dream, man.
Well,
I get to,
good
I
deal.
get to work from home and do this kind of stuff whenever. So yeah,
Yeah, good for you. I'm glad to hear it.
yeah. After 30 years, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Next step is retire, but I already feel like I'm kind of retired. So I don't know.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to get there. I know what you mean. Welcome, Don. Do you have any questions or problems or anything? Okay. Um, so Bob, what are you up to? What are you building or what are you doing?
Well, I'm about 4 weeks into this, large scale M2 that I purchased, but I've been figuring it out pretty good. I've got a history with CNCs a little bit. I had a Bob CNC before that I played around with for about a year, and took a pause for about a year and a half, and I just realized something the other day that was causing me issues,
What's that?
and I was making this nativity scene, and I went on ahead and did an array of them, like two rows by 4 columns, 8 of them out of a sheet of plywood.
Yep.
And I noticed on my second one, whenever I stopped the first one and got done, I was like, yeah, that looks okay. Let's go ahead and do the second one. It was coming out angled. And
Oh,
the reason why is because I was resetting the chains every time. I was basically saying, okay, let's re-zero this machine, and then it would get all skewed.
hmm.
And what I figured out is I've always centered on, or zeroed on center, but if I just did the whole job by itself and let it do its thing and do all 8 instead of one at a time, everything worked like it should have. And it was just user error. So
Oh,
that was really a good relief to me, knowing that if I plug a hole in the center, power goes out, I can go back to center and pick up where I left off. And then two, no more of this angle stuff.
yeah.
I've been resetting those crazy chains. So
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you figured it out.
yeah, and that's just after I figured it out, I was like, that's something pretty simple, man. You should have just picked up on that instead of
Hey,
resetting the chain all the time.
quit beating yourself up. I mean, we've all
Yeah,
made mistakes and we've all done silly things.
yeah,
The first time I ran the Z axis too high and stripped a bunch of stuff, I felt like an idiot. But it
yeah,
happens, and you live and you
yeah.
learn, and that's how you get better at this, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm really itching to get into this 1.5 inch stock again, but I'm a little concerned about it, the geometry being off. But that was before I knew what I know now. But it seemed like where I was cutting 19-inch table legs, they would come out to around 17 on a 1.5 inch block of wood. So I don't know if that was user error or not, but I've been hesitant to do that because it takes me a full day just to glue up the wood just to get it on there and try it. So,
Sure.
but yeah, I think today I'm going to draw up like a cedar bench that goes in your shower,
Hmm.
to sit on or put stuff on, and kind of
Yep,
angle the top. And that'll be a good test, at 18, 19 inches, how does it handle that swoop and
sure.
make a difference? So,
Yeah, that's great. I'd love to hear about it and see how it turns out. So let me know.
okay.
I'm serious. I want to see it or whatever. If you're open
Yeah.
to sharing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
hey, Drew, nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Matt. Hey, Bob,
Hey,
Jan, Don, how y'all doing?
Good.
Good.
you haven't
Good.
been around in a while, have you?
Man, I've been, everywhere and nowhere, right?
You've been
Yeah,
testing
I've
it.
been pretty consumed by 3D printing. So I've been,
Oh, okay. We
Patrick's
thought
been
that you
taking
were
over and
all
helping
out.
out.
We thought you were all out on a Black Ops mission to test the M3.
Yeah, trying to keep it secret and keep it safe as much as we can. So yeah, yeah, good to see everybody. Everybody pretty much knows this is just the our regular CNC call every week. So any questions or tips and tricks or anything that we want to share or just work together to try to come to a solution on, that's what we're here for. So let me change my name from Patrick too. So I'm logged into this one here. I'll rename myself. But yeah, so Bob, you've been having some issues with your chains. I just kind of jumped right into the middle of that. I heard like
Yeah,
last
it
end.
was basically user issues. So, and
I've been there.
just learning curve. I kept hitting the reset chains, and it was skewing all of my stuff. And it dawned on me, well, let's try it without it. And yeah, I don't know what to say. Just user error.
It takes some practice for sure. Have you had a chance to look at the new calibration guide that we got together? So it walks through the resetting the chains and that whole process and step by step for like each one of the calibration slides. And there's a whole part on there to help you get like the exact center of your chains and get your chains together that we have. So if you're having problems with, you're mentioning, 17 to 19 inches and it being kind of squished, then that probably has to do with the M2 thinking about the different chain lengths. So if you want to check that out, it's on our resources page. And you can go through that process and kind of make sure that it's all measured, because that squishing can come from it just thinking that it's the geometry of the machine is just like off by a little bit. So
right,
help you out.
Yeah. And I was telling Matt earlier, I don't know if you jumped on, but I'm itching to go back to 1.5 inch stock, but I'm kind of leery of it just because I don't want to ruin another piece of wood. But I'm going to start
absolutely
this time. So
yeah. And if you wanted to practice something, you could even put like if it needs to be something exact and you're kind of getting that calibration tuned in, you could put a pencil in the center of your sled, either inside of your chuck, or just kind of mount it on there, and then you can just run like a real simple G code and then measure it and see if it's what you want it to be. That's
crazy simple.
Thanks. And then that can help you out, because that is the most infuriating thing. I've done that too, where it just like you ruin a whole side of a piece of ply, and it's like, well, there goes that. So I feel you there. So
that's a great idea. I didn't even think about a pencil. I went and actually got some foam thinking, Conley, whenever he said something about that the other day doing foam, but pencil would be a lot easier.
Yeah, it sure would. That's a great idea, Drew. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, especially for big stuff where you want to make sure that, is it gonna slant a lot? What is the slant gonna be? So then you can compensate it in your file, and that can really just help out.
Yeah,
for that, especially for that big stuff. And then the closer that you can get it to the center when you're making it too, Bob, that's, as you said on that chain slack, that's where it's going to be the most accurate.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I didn't measure it, but I kind of noticed on the Yeti I made the other day, he looks a little short and squatty, but I didn't actually measure it out to see how close it was. But yeah, he came out pretty good, and I did some nativity scenes that turned out really good. So
awesome. Yeah, right on. So how about everybody else? Everybody else doing good? Got any cool Christmas projects or any support that y'all need?
I do. I have both. So I have a little show and tell, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
I did this on a
wow.
Nice.
But I put holes around the heart. I didn't do that with the CNC, but that's so I can put
right.
Christmas
lights through.
Right. So I can
That's
put
awesome.
Christmas lights through it, and then I'm gonna have that sitting outside, in front of my house here. So
is that foam core?
No, I got like treated plywood, and I figured I'll just cut it up and paint the heck out of it, and because Texas weather is pretty brutal on wood. So anyways, I thought I'd give that a shot. I was excited about doing this. I wish the CNC would have drilled all the holes, because I got the holes all messed up, but that's a lot of drill operations that would have took forever. So I just
you hand drilled it. So did you kind of trace the heart?
Like I traced the heart with the CNC. Yeah, with the CNC. Yeah. And then I tried to use like a compass to do the holes, but the bit wandered all over the place because there was that channel in there and it just didn't like that. So live and learn. But anyways, that's my Christmas project, and I'm working on getting that all finished up with the paint and I got to push all the little LED or the lights through it and everything. So, but Drew, I do have a question. I was holding off on this, and I talked about this on the last one, but I've got a bunch of upgrades I want to make on my M2, and I just haven't pulled the trigger because I know the machine will be down for, a week or so. So I finally pulled the trigger because Casey was, prodding me last week. So it's like, okay, fine. So I'm making a new frame for my spoil board, and I believe I bought I know I bought the 15-foot chains. So I want to set it up. I want to set it up right so that the distances are correct. And so what I was wondering is, I'm going off the XL frame, guide that you wrote, but I'm putting my own spin on it because I have French cleats in my garage, and I'm trying to make this mount on French cleats. So what I need to know is how far from the top of the spoil board to the either top or the bottom of the where the chain where
motor
the
offset.
Yeah. How do I need to do that? Because I've got the longer chains now. I waited until the Black Friday deal, and I got those on a sale or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm taking that all. I took it all apart, and I've got the box frame built, but I need to figure out how to put that up there, and I just need to know how far off to get the height up. And then is the XL frame, is it 12 feet top board then?
Okay. It is. Okay. Yeah. So there's two big things that you want to keep in mind when you're going with the big 15-foot chains. You want to have at least 24 inches between that top of your board and where the chain comes off of the sprockets on the top. So where you would measure for your motor offset, like that, at least 24 inches there. You can get by with like 22, but we recommend at least 24. And really, if you want to go 26 or even 28, that's fine too. Because so the wider that is, the more space it's going to give you for that triangulation, so it can kind of move out. And that's why the beam is 12 instead of 10, because that gives you a wider angle. So it's not like a short and squat triangle. It's a bigger, wider one, which is better. And that's what leads to more accuracy in all the way down in those very corners. And if you want to cut like off the bottom corner of your like 4x8 space, it helps having that extra space in those 15-foot chains to do it. Like, it's possible to do it with 11-foot chains, but you got to kind of tweak it and move it around and stuff like that. So those are the two big things. So at least 24 inches. Okay. And then at least 12 feet. But you can go longer than 12 feet if you want, and you can go more than 24 inches. I wouldn't go more than maybe like probably 32, because then it's going to be harder for your M2 to get all the way down there in those corners, because your chains and just the links of the chains and stuff. But as long as you're in that area, you'll probably in that like 8 inch, 6 to 8 inch like area, then you should be good.
Well, I was wondering, so Patrick was talking about the software and just being able to punch in, hey, I have the XL frame, and not yet, but I was wondering if I needed to follow some kind of specific size requirements and stuff to figure that out. I'm planning on going to a 12-foot board on the top, and cool. I'm gonna raise it up as much as I can. I don't know how much I'm gonna be able to get it up there, but yeah, I was noticing the 11-foot chains are just a little too short, but I can, I just thought, hey, I'm all in on the M2, so I'm gonna get the, the bigger chains and stuff. So I was okay with that, but I just need to figure out all the dimensions, and I don't want to, regret it when I get to the new software and be like, oh man, I can't even use this anymore or whatever,
So the new software is that we're in development of, and kind of the final stages of getting. It is going to have like the basic frame guides where you can just select it, and then it will use that as kind of baseline values. But the current Makerverse, you still have to do all that manually, and that will still be possible in 2.0. You'll be able to manually input all those settings as well. Because I mean, there's so many different frames out there. We don't want to just like I mean, it's an awesome DIY tool. Like we want everyone to make whatever you want to make with it.
Sure.
So with the current setup that you're working on, I would also suggest that calibration guide. And I can go and find that and drop that link right here. So you can walk through those steps in that calibration guide. Let's see, you can go through those steps in the calibration guide, and it will, let's see, it will give you all the tools and steps that you need no matter what your type of frame that you have. So it'll say like, measure this on your frame, measure this part on your frame for each one of the slides all the way through there. And we intentionally didn't add, and say you have to do it this way or something like that, and made those measurements still manual, even though someday, in the future, it is going to be where you can just select that and then you'll start off from that basic frame. This is for like anybody's frame design that you're going to design. Okay. So I would suggest checking that out too. And then that will kind of give you some tips and tricks, especially on those 15-foot chains, because you'll want to, you're going to have to recalibrate everything with those 15-foot chains as well. So the little paint pen that came with your M2, if you still have that,
I do,
then that's useful. Okay, sweet, because it helps to mark your chains and then mark your sprockets too on your design. And when you're getting also like large, and when you get to like the 15-foot chains and you're really getting that bigger frame, the weight of the sled matters a lot too. So you want to make sure that you've weighed your sled and have those values inputted as well, because those are like just generic. I think it's, if the bricks were 10 pounds each, then that's what they would be. But you want to actually weigh your sled and put like every one of those values, and kind of walks you through all of that in that guide. So that's just the calibration guide on the M2 resources page. So you'll be able to take whatever frame design you make, and you'll be able to go and then go through those calibration steps with it to be able to get it set.
Okay.
And if you go like over or under the chains, like because that's the thing that you can do with like older Maslows. It's like how it's feeding over or under. Like you want to make sure that you check those boxes as well. So there's still a lot of variation that you can do in your frame design, depending on how you want to make it.
Well, I like the way it's set up before, and I really hesitated tearing it all apart, but I was like, I got some new ideas on a frame design. I want to do it. And then Casey went ahead and like came up with a similar design, and I thought, damn it, Casey.
Well, I mean, that's part of the fun, right? Just be like, I think I can do this a little bit better. I'm going to take this apart and mess with it, and like go for it. That's the cool thing about the tool. It's like, it's such a DIY thing that as long as you have some of those constant values, and it talks about that like in our frame guides and stuff like that, like the constants. Like in the bottom of that Excel guide, there is in the appendix, it talks about the different frame guides, and it talks about the constant values that you have to have. So like the 15-degree angle, the distance between motors, and the motor offset itself. Like those are the big ones.
Okay. So. Well, thank you. Yeah, I haven't got all the way through it, but I'm reading it, and I think it's really good. So you did a good job.
Awesome. Thanks.
What's the effect of having the wrong weight entered on your calibration?
Slanting is one of the weird things that it'll do. So I had problems with mine, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I was talking to Joel, and he's like, well, if you put your weight in there, and I was like, no. So it was a while back, and the weight of it, because it's calculating like basically the tension torque of the motors. So for a heavier weight, or for the average weight, it's trying to calculate that torque that it needs to adjust for the weight of your sled itself. So when you put that weight in there, then it helps those motors to turn the exact distance that they need to move it, because that weight is just one more of the variables in there. So that could also help you with your 17 to 19. That could be something as well. But slanting is normally the biggest thing. And sometimes like squish stuff normally has to do with the chains and the measurements on the chains.
Yeah.
Normally. But they all kind of, everything interacts. That's one of the things that's really hard, is they all kind of interact for the calculation. So
yeah. And Bob, a tip on the weight thing. I just got the wife's scale, brought it to the garage. I got on it, and then I got on it with my sled, and I did the math, just took off whatever it was. So it was pretty,
and you have to oh, sorry, Matt.
Yep. And then I converted it to newtons or whatever it needed. Yeah. With Google. Exactly. Google to help me with that. I didn't do that.
Okay. Yeah. And in that calibration guide, I put some links in there so you can just click and go straight to the website and calculate it for newtons, because it's still in newtons, which I haven't used newtons. I didn't even remember what newtons were, but I'm sure that I learned about newtons at one point or another. But yeah, it's just basically a standard force newtons a measurement to just standardize it for everything. So you just got to convert your kilograms or pounds to newtons, and then you'll be force newtons, and then you'll be good to go.
Okay.
All righty. How about anybody else? Working on
Yes,
anything?
at first, oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good. Hey, Jim.
Okay, hello. At first, thank you very much for all the hints I got last meetings. Yes, I come a little bit more near to the with the accuracy. First,
Yeah, because you're working on those cabinets.
No, yeah, just a second.
You were trying to get sub-millimeter accuracy, I think, right, Jan? Isn't that what you're working on?
Yes, now I'm nearly half millimeter, and I think this is okay.
That's awesome.
Yes, yes. So you can see here, this is one of the table which then coming out here, and you can fix it then when it's finished, and you see it's really nice now.
That's great.
And yes, the main point, or the where I come a little bit forward, was that I bought some new milling cutters, and
bits.
they're a little bit shorter than the others, and maybe a little bit sharper too. And yes, yes, with the result at the moment, it's really fine. And you know what is this? I have to board this because this is a cap to change the light from the oven. You know?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe it's possible to print it, but I don't have a printer. But I try to do it by plywood, and it's working. And
very good.
You see,
that's awesome.
Accuracy. Yeah. And yes, I'm really fine with this results. Thank you very much.
That's great, Jan. So what did you have to do to get it into that sub-millimeter accuracy? What worked for you in the calibration settings? Can you kind of talk about your process and what you did for everyone so they can help out?
Yes, at first I increased the weight to I think 35 pounds. I don't know exactly. I just know in kilogram, but I think it's 35. So the almost maximum. And yes, and do the calibration process more and more often, of course. But I don't knew that you already updated on the page. Maybe I will take a look later on the new guideline for calibration.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, under a millimeter is excellent. So
yes.
I would say that you don't need to go through more of the calibration stuff, because like we recommend like 3 to 6 millimeters as fully calibrated. So like mine is like 3.2 millimeters. So that's what we have for fully calibrated, because it's over that full space. So if you're at 0.5 mil, that's amazing.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks, Jan. All right. Is anybody else working on anything or need any help with something? Hey, Dustin. See you jumped on there. Or Bob or Don? Y'all need any help with anything?
Nah, I'm just kind of lurking. I just got my kid a couple weeks ago. I won't be able to really build my frame until after the first. So I'm just listening in and, planning.
Awesome. Yeah. It's a fun process to jump into, but yeah, it can be a lot. So that's why we're here every week, help you out.
I've been using these two, I don't know what to call them, but they're router bits. They're two blades, one on each side. It's made by Frued. I guess that's how you say it. F-R-E-U-D. And I've got a 1/4 inch and I've got a 1/2 inch one, but they look like you can sharpen them. just because the blades are straight. Has anybody got any experience with that?
I've heard of people sharpening before, but I haven't sharpened.
Okay.
One. Do you have like a belt sharpener?
Well, I was going to get like a diamond, you know, a little diamond file or something. But yeah, I don't mind buying bits, but boy, whenever I get those 1/4-inch bits, it seems like I can cut through a lot of more material faster. But they're, you know, they're $20, and I'd rather reuse them as much as I could. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about cutting in, like, if you're going to cut 1.5 inch material, like you're cutting thick material, you pretty much have to have a 1/4-inch bit. If you go smaller than that, it's going to take you, 3 or 4 days to cut down into something. So yeah, in time, is one of the downsides to having a giant CNC machine, because it's going to take a while to do stuff. So yeah, just really being able to gouge in and take that material out is going to be helpful.
I tell you something cool I learned about doing thick material. I haven't tested it yet, but I watched a training video on it the other day. Is if you're doing multiple passes and you're punching through, you know how you get that really fine line on every pass on the side? Well, VCarve has a setting that says, okay, on the last pass, let's come in, point, whatever, just to clean it all up at once.
And go all the way in and then just like take it all out.
Yeah, just shave off the edge just a skosh. That way it all cleans itself up and it's less sanding. So I thought that was kind of neat. You guys probably
nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
know all that, but I thought, man, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and Casey had a really good tip about sanding too, is just like spray a little bit of mist, like water on there to help, and it'll help the little burrs to stick up for you to sand it easier. And so you don't have to sand so much and go through so many passes. I thought that was a sweet tip. And I was sanding like a little box that I was making the other day, and it worked really well. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And there's kind of 2 frames of thought in the bits. So we have Carbide Bits is what we sell. There's a million places you can get CNC bits from, and we like to do Carbide because they last longer, so you don't have to get them as often. But if you're going to be like cutting into a lot of like MDF, for instance, which are just like the glue will just goop it up and wear it down, you can get like cheaper bits and get them by like the dozens. I know that's what Lauren does, is just gets like just cheap bits and gouges into them, and then like just goes through all those different bits and just cycles them through. When they start to get dull, just like switch it out for another one because they're inexpensive. So it's kind of like the trade-off. If you can get one really nice that you can sharpen and keep for a while, or just have them as like replaceable where you can kind of swap through.
Right. And then I think the last question I have is I'm using that little Bosch something shot, hot shot or whatever it's called that you guys sell with your kit. What's the advantage of going with a bigger router? Is it speeds, or is it
power?
Just power?
Yeah. So if you go with like a big 2.4 horsepower or something, then yeah, it's going to give you bigger power. And then you can go up to, like 1/2-inch bits too. So if you're going to be cutting large material, that could help you as well, because then you can just increase that bit diameter size even more. And then that's why we have those 91 clamps. The original Maslow, that's what it ran off of, was the big 2.4 horsepower, like Bosch's and DeWalt's and things like that, and Rigids. So like those giant ones were the original, because you could put like a 1/2-inch bit on there and just really dig into material and etch it out. So that's the biggest bonus to that, is just having more power, and then the ability to have larger bits to increase or decrease your cut time.
Well, I've got a Porter cable. I might measure it and see if you guys have a bracket to.
Yeah, I have several Porter cables at my house, and I was asking some stuff on the Facebook page the other day about whether it's 91 or not. I never got a chance to actually go in and measure them, but I have a guy. He just ordered the 91, and he's got the same 690. He said he would get in touch with me as soon as he gets it to see if it fits. So,
okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. There's a lot of different routers that are out there. And we try to update, and we'll ask in the owners group and on the forum and stuff about every 6 months to see what routers everybody's using, so we can kind of keep everything updated. You can do adapters. So if it's a little bit smaller than 91, then you can make an adapter, or we can even make an adapter for you and send it to you. We've got adapters for smaller diameter machines. So there's some small like Makitas that are out there that's 65 instead of 71. So we have like 3D printed adapters that we'll send out. And there probably are those or ones that we can make or expand for those larger ones too. So if it's a little bit smaller than 91, then we can get you an adapter to where you can still be able to cut it. But if it's larger than 91 millimeters, that's where kind of the issue is, because it won't fit in the clamp at all, and it's got to be secure in there. So the smaller, if it's smaller, it'll fit, and we can find a way for it to fit. But if it's larger, then yeah, we're running some issues with it. So yeah, well, does anybody else have any questions or anything you'd like to talk about? Project you'd like to share? So, all right, I'll share what I'm about to do. I got my laser set up. I've been working on that so I can engrave some stuff, and I'm going to engrave all of our wooden utensils in the house with some laser patterns and designs to kind of like personalize them and give them a personal touch on all the handles. So I'm looking forward to using the laser and kind of testing the engraving capabilities and stuff, because I've been able to use it a little bit and see it at our main shop, but I haven't had time to really dig into some projects on it. So that's going to be my my Christmas project, will be diving in and working on some different projects with the etching.
Are you cutting out like a jig to fit those utensils into so it can slide over it?
So what I was thinking about is to stack up material around it, kind of like a skirt, and then secure them on there with probably some screws and some other little like shims and stuff, so I can keep them secure, and then it can slide and move over the jig. So it'd be almost like an open like rectangle that the sled would then slide around on the outside of, as it's gonna like kind of go by. And then I wanted it to kind of like go by each one of the passes to kind of give it like a geodesic design on there as it's going across. So I'll let you all know how that goes.
Yeah, sounds interesting.
What's the power of the laser that you guys provide?
So 2.8 watt. So we're working and been doing some testing on some stronger wattage lasers, but with just the process and getting it started, 2.8 watt was the most secure one that we could go for with JTech. That's been a trusted brand. They're awesome, and they're based out of Texas, I believe, and they make fantastic lasers. But we decided to stick with the 2.8 watt as we're kind of working on all the other ones, just so you can do some engraving capabilities. So it can only cut, you can't cut through all materials, and you can cut about 1/8 an inch through some different plastics and cardboard, depending on like what material it is. But the watt is just not really a cutter as much as some of the other ones would be. It's definitely more of an engraver, so you can engrave stuff on the outside of stuff.
What kind of speeds are you using for engraving?
You got to slow down. Yeah, so you got to go real slow. So usually 15 to 20. So like probably half the speed that you'd be running the actual like milling on. So if you can go faster, it's just going to be lighter. So if you go slow, really slow, then it'll be darker. But if you go like kind of that medium speed, then you can get like good quality lines and stuff like that. So usually around 15 to 20.
Just out of curiosity, is there a speed limit on how fast you can go with the M2, or?
Not really. You can crank your speeds up in your G code. I would say if you get to like 40 or 50, you're probably pushing the limit, because you're limited on your milling. So you're limited by like the physics of trying to cut into the wood. So it's going to start skipping, because the M2 itself can go pretty quick across the board, but because the bit is actually in a material, it's going to get stuck in the material because it can't cut the material fast enough. So that could get kind of dangerous, especially with like hardwoods, if you're trying to go really fast, because the bit can get stuck inside of your wood, and then that can cause issues with it jumping and hopping and kind of moving around. And it can break your bit off or damage. Damage.
What I was thinking was for later on down the road with the lasers, like I've got a glow forge, and that thing will hum along, you know, at whatever speed. 1,000's not uncommon for me, but
and I think the glow forge is like 40 or 80 watts, something like that. Glow forge is a like way more powerful laser than what we have. Yeah, for sure. Do you like your glow forge?
You know, I do and I don't. I'm thinking about the warranty's up, and I'm thinking about cutting the whole ass end of it out. And because it is a pass-through, it's a pro, but I'm thinking about cutting the whole bottom off and the front and the back, just so I can set it on a bigger piece of wood. You know, I'm always running into this issue where I want to do something that's thicker than 1/4 of an inch. And that's the allowable pass through. So
you can kind of expand it and tweak with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen people do that before?
oh yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, because it's got a table in there that's about a little over 1.5 inches thick. So it'd been nice if they would have said, okay, yeah, we acknowledge that you should do 1/4 inch, but if you take out that breadcrumb tray or the crumb tray, we're going to let you do 1.5 inches. That would have solved my whole problem.
Right.
But they just didn't. So
Yeah, I wonder how it's going to cut. I'd be really interested to see how it can cut through 1.5 inches of different materials and stuff like that. Because it seems like it would be, you just have to do a lot of passes.
well, I'm not interested in cutting through it. I'm interested in engraving it.
Oh, just engraving it. Okay, sweet. Well, then, yeah, you'll be set.
Yeah, because I go to a sawmill, and what I have to do is get 2x6s, and I have to immediately come home and re-mill them down to 1/4 of an inch just to get them in there. Because with crumb tray and everything else, you've only got a 1/2 inch clearance underneath that laser just to get things done. But if you pull out the crumb tray, you got to pull 2 inches.
That you can stick in there. That's nice. Yeah.
Your constraint is a 20-inch width and 12 inches deep without the pass through. So
I haven't seen the Pro. I've only seen the standard Glowforge. That's the ones that I've kind of played around with.
Yeah, they look the same. I think it's just 5 more watts of power and a pass through, and that's it.
Nice. Yeah. Cool. Was anybody else got anything they're working on or like to share?
Hey, Bob, just for your reference. So theory is everything, right? But there's always variables that you can't account for. So I did do those tests to see how fast it'll go. You can absolutely go into the settings and you can basically unleash it. The issue you're going to run into with the stock M2 is the motors only run so fast. And what I mean by that, they're a stepper motor, right? So every step gets inputted into the motor. If you increase that inches per minute over 40, it'll start skipping steps. So you'll have situations where the motor, it'll like lurch to the wrong position, or it'll go to the wrong position because one of the steps didn't get received by the motor. So gotcha. 40, it absolutely, I pushed mine to like 65 inches per minute, but it started becoming highly inaccurate and randomly inaccurate. Because of that. Now,
were you cutting when you were doing that?
Oh yeah.
Or just moving it?
I did cuts. I did just random moves, vertical and left and right. I did all kinds of stuff. I did it with foam, did it with 3/4 inch, did all kinds of depth of cuts. In my personal opinion, if you're just doing any sort of shapes with no kind of really detailed pocketing or engraving, 35 inches per minute all day, every day. I've done it all the way up with a 1/8 inch bit at just over an 1/8 inch depth of cut. It'll cut it very accurately. It'll cut it without a problem. The other issue you run into, and this is with even if you have a high powered router, I got giant 1/2 inch bits, very expensive 1/2 inch bits that run like $75 to $100 a piece. And yes, they will cut, but at the end of the day, you're still on a sled and that bit is having to be pulled through. And because it's riding on a sled, it'll actually tilt the sled ever so slightly. Now, it doesn't matter so much, but if you're going to run those and you're going to do over a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch pass, you got to slow her down. So you're going to have to go to about 15 to 20 inches per minute tops. But you can absolutely turn it up. Just know there's repercussions to it. So really what I recommend is, like, all my cuts I do at 35 inches per minute. I just adjust the depth of the cut based upon the material I'm cutting through. I try to cut down on my cutting time because I do a lot of repeated cuts, a lot of like the same batching out of manufacturing stuff. So I try to do everything in 5 passes or less. Occasionally I'll go to 6 passes, but what that means is I'm running 1/8 inch, as he said, really cheap bits, but you can absolutely push it through. I run 1/4 inch, but I found the cost of upgrading to a 1/4 inch bit and spending that money really doesn't benefit that much. So I bought a 10-pack of a total of 15 bits. I think I spent $30 for 15 bits. 5 of them were the spiral bits, and 10 of them were straight bits for MDF. And I got to go back and do the numbers, but we're well into over 1,000 ornaments that we cut, and we just finished our last orders this week because we're obviously traveling, and I still have 4 bits left over.
Oh, wow.
4 straight bits and 2 spiral bits left over.
That's good.
And that's with cutting. And I'm talking like the other night, I just bashed out 15 rounds out of a 3/4 inch plywood. The issue you run in, like, accuracy is relative. Like, what are you comfortable with? Like, I got my accuracy under a 1 millimeter, but like, even I was going to reach out to MakerMade this week, Drew. I was going to ask you about it. Because obviously, like, I've been pushing my machine a lot faster than other people would. And I've been really not just pushing it faster, but I've been using it a lot more than the average maker. What I'm finding is the actual carrier bearings for the actual Z-axis are now loose. So when I move my machine, I don't know if you can see yours, if you push your router, it shouldn't move at all. Mine is actually have a little bit of jiggle in it. And I was going to see if MakerMade, if we could strike a deal or something, because I've had it for about a year now, almost a year. I didn't know if there was something about purchasing just those bearings or what we could do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can definitely work something out. With those bearings, are your set screws still tight?
Yes, everything is tight. I went back. It's actually, you can see it. Obviously I'm inside right now, but you can actually, it'll jiggle about 1 millimeter.
Oh, really?
Because all 4 of those bearings, like I said, I've been doing a lot of cutting. I've probably cut, I mean, I've got close to probably 250 different files, and I've cut a lot of them. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think we went through 10 or 15 sheets of plywood just this last 2 months. It's just been a lot of cutting. And I mean, obviously I know, like, I'm the one that wore it out. I just was hoping to avoid having to purchase a whole Z-axis, obviously.
Yeah, we've got those parts. Absolutely. So yeah, let us know and we can figure that out. Cause I mean, those bearings, you should be able to pop them out and put them back in there and replace it, or maybe just that bearing assembly.
Yeah, so, it's just the bearings. Sure. I went through it pretty thoroughly. I was like, what is loose? And it's not too bad, right? It doesn't affect the cut. The amount of like difference
just when you're moving,
cleaned up with a single pass with a trim bit, right? A trim or a flush cut bit will immediately clean it up. It takes an extra 15 to 20 seconds to clean it up. So it's not that big of a deal. It's just, I've noticed it's slowly getting worse and worse and worse. Yeah, just trying to get it right. I was going to bring it up. I don't know if we have time or if you want to, or if y'all are like actually recording this. There's been a lot of questions about creating SVGs. And if we have time and you're okay with it, I'm happy to take 10 minutes and not even 10 minutes and show my method for creating MVGs, because I know the M2 comes with Inkscape, correct?
Yes, I think it does, or it comes with the link of it. I think it used to come with Inkscape. It doesn't anymore. It used to be on the drive. Because I know, but now it's just we just got links to it. It used to come on like a little USB.
Because I know it's free, and that was my thing. Like, to the new user, free software. Because I know I love Illustrator, but I don't have like a new version of Illustrator, and I don't have the subscription. But Inkscape, just going to the average user that's going to pull it up if they want to see just my method. Or
absolutely,
if you want to splice it and put it on the page, or however you want to do it, I'm happy to do that. I don't want to take up anybody else's time if they have questions, but I'm more than happy to share and do that.
Well, I know Don, he's a new user. He's waiting to set up his machine, so I'm sure that he'd like to enjoy it. And then I can cut this part of the video out and put it online to help people. So absolutely, Lauren. Yeah, take it away. Let's talk about some SVGs for a bit in your process.
All right. Is there a way for me to share my screen?
Yes, let me give you access to it.
Sorry if y'all hear the baby. I'm bouncing on my leg, keeping her happy.
There you go, man. It's all you.
All right, so I'll pull up. Let's see here. Actually do this. Hang on 1 second, sorry. And then we'll go here, share. All right, can y'all see my screen just fine?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. So I'm going to pull up Inkscape, and you can see I've already created one. Now, a lot of times I'm going to show you how I created this thing, but just for fonts, right? So that we're in the main page of Inkscape. So a lot of times when you're cutting, you may want to make something that stands, and that's why I've created it like this, right? So notoriously, if you drop a font into Easel, it will have issues with that font, or it may be copyrighted or whatever the case may be. And especially if you're just trying to do it from home use, like that personal use, that copyright shouldn't apply. So notoriously, like we ended up downloading a font, the NFL Chiefs, right? You recognize that font. So I'm just going to type my name for sake, right? And then I'll put it in. But when you type that in, this font specifically is an example of one that'll give you problems in Easel. But all you want to do is basically type in your font. You can adjust the size. You can do however you want to. You can adjust the length and width up here. I don't know how to move this off my screen. Oh, there we go. You can adjust the length and height however you want to do. And then, or you can locking it and moving it up, or you can flex it as you see fit. Now, with that in mind, once you get that height, all you'll want to do is you'll just go up to path. This is where all of your, in the path block or the path, the drop down menu is how you do almost everything. And you just go to the first one, object to path. Now you can select each one of them, and each one of them has those nodes, and there's now an SVG, right? So when you have it, the only other thing you may want to do, now you can absolutely cut it out just like this. You can import it just like this, right? Or you can actually take and do like I do, and I'll drop in a square to combine them all, right? So I know this, for example, we'll just make it an even 12 inches across, right? So we'll take this and make it 12 inches across. Now the issue is this square is also not an SVG. So if I don't turn it into an SVG, it'll have a problem. So we're going to center this up. Whoops, I selected both of them. We'll drop it in on the bottom. So now they're connected at the bottom. But first I also have to go back into path. I select it, go back into path, and hit object to path. Now, when I select it, you see it has the nodes. You see what I'm saying? Now, at the same time, I don't want it to be too tall, obviously. So we'll adjust it. Usually a ½ inch is about right. And now you're very close to what you want to do. So I'll show you. We'll delete this, and I'll save this for sake. And we'll put it into Easel in just a minute. But if I drop this into Easel right now, which I'll show you, which as you can see, I have a ton of files in here. And I think most of us, correct me if I'm wrong, Drew, I think most people use Easel. But if we import the SVG.
Yeah, that's the basic one that we start because it's free. It's a free G-code one. So yeah.
So you'll see
perfect.
It's not, each one of them is now separate, right? Whoops. So you can see it there. Sorry, I'm struggling here. There you go. You see how it's, if we went and made this a cut outside the path, you'll see how it's separate. So the last thing you really want to do is you want to come back into Inkscape. You'll select everything, then go path and union it. Well, I should say this. Actually, you got to select it this way. I'm sorry, you got to use this little. So these two, one lets you select larger objects. The pointer beneath it lets you select individual. So what you'll do is you'll select two objects, and then you'll path and union, and they become one. Select the next one, path, union, and they'll combine together. I say that. Oh, they're not touching. That's a fun path.
Can you explain what you just did there for the uninitiated to see that they're not touching?
I actually didn't combine them. So all you'll end up doing, so basically right now, as you saw in Easel, they're all separate. And when they're all separate, you can't, they want to cut out separately. So what you'll end up doing, especially if you're wanting to put that line together, is you'll select it, basically select all the nodes, just like I did there, and you'll bump it down into that line, just like all of these. So if you need them, select them all, bump it down into that line to get it even, right? Now, when I union them, or I combine them, so I go path and union, they all connect together. You see how those are now one piece? And the same with these, right? I go to path and union, now it's all one. Now when I save, and I go back into Easel, what you'll see, delete that one, I didn't, is it's now one piece. You see how that's now all combined as an SVG, not an image. Does that make sense? Now,
yeah, that's excellent one.
Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is we can take any one of the images. So we'll do another one. And I'm going to show you the last real thing that really helps, right? So I think I just accidentally closed it. No, there it is. So we're going to import an image from one of my wife's multiple projects. Any one of these, right? So let's go with, we'll just go with this cow, for example. So if I move it over the edge, you'll see that it's got a white background, right? It's clearly an image. It'll load, but it'll have issues. And you'll have a lot of jagged cuts. But if you want to convert any of these images, all you do is you just copy and paste it in. You don't even need to import it. You can actually copy and paste straight from Google. Then you'll go path and trace bitmap right here. No, you can't see it, so I'm moving it over. All right. Now you have three different real options. There's a lot more in depth, and I encourage everybody to play with it. But all you'll end up doing is the speckles really, if you have any of those little weird outliers, you know what I'm saying? Like if it's an image with a lot more colors and you get the speckles, you can turn that up and it'll reduce those. Smooth corners tries to reduce the number of hard corners. So a lot of times when you select it, it may have a lot of hard corners, or you'll have basically like a polygon result. And then lastly, optimize. Now, if I don't optimize it, what it does is it reduces the number of nodes that happens in a curve. So as you can see on this cow, there's a lot of curves in this artwork. And what it'll do, if I keep it low, it'll make a ton of little nodes all the way through that curve. However, if I do optimize it and make it closer to 1, it'll have a lot less nodes in those curves. So once I hit update and then hit OK, it'll then produce the actual SVG, as you can see. All I do then, close it out, delete the original picture, center it up on the page, and save it and drop it right into Easel. But that is literally all there is to it. And just like that, dropping it in, path, trace bitmap, and 9 times out of 10, you'll get your image right away. Does that make sense? I know I just kind of went through that rather quickly, but anything you do in Inkscape, start at the path menu and just select either trace bitmap for an image or object to path or stroke to path, depending on how you're doing your text, if you're dropping in text. And it will produce very, very fine results. The only other concern that you may have is when you're doing your cuts, as you can see, there's a lot of nodes, is you got to determine what matters to you, right? Because certain ones of these may be a little jagged, or if you zoom in, you may have some problems. So you can do the manual optimization way and delete nodes that are in your way, right? And then you can straighten them out as you see fit. Does that make sense? I'm asking. I mean, if y'all have questions as I'm going, please tell me. I just want to make it as easy as I can to understand.
that manual way, that's great. That was a great explanation of that, Lauren. Thank you for that. Can you kind of explain how to get it, like if you wanted to optimize it again? So let's say that I optimized it once, but I want to go back in and optimize it a second time, then what would you do?
So you can go back, and I think if I'm correct, you can do trace and do it again. And you can make a second one. I think it will. Let's see here. It may not let me do another one. Traditionally in the past, what I've always done is I would basically adjust these numbers ever so slightly. Now,
I think because you didn't adjust it, that might be why I didn't do it.
Yeah, it may. Let's see if it'll do it again. No, it's not letting me. It's being funky. Usually, if I shouldn't have deleted that picture out of there. Excuse me. I wonder if I can go back. The picture will come back. There it is. Yeah, so in the past, all I really have done, Reagan, it's okay. It's okay. Is I would just click the original image. If I didn't like the previous one, click it, update the optimization, and hit it again. I'm running fast in the computer. You can do it, computer. There we go. And it'll give you a different version with the less nodes. But it's just playing with those numbers. I just see a lot of times people building these images and they're trying to get them right. And they're struggling with them. The other thing is, I wonder if I can. Reagan, it's okay. It's really fixing errors that I'd like to show, but I can't find. Hey, you're okay. There's a lot of times when people create, especially my wife does a lot of Cricut, and a lot of these laurels will get really jagged. And you'll see this image right here, for example, like, hey, you're trying to cut these out. You see how blurry these are?
Yeah, for sure.
You go in and you path and you trace that bit net. I find one to be about right. What you'll see is sometimes they're jagged. And you can absolutely go in. A lot of times you can see like the ends of these aren't done right. And you may need to go back in and actually zoom in on them. And you can adjust those to give you that round end that you may want, if that makes sense. But it's really just however you want to do it. Oh, I did something wrong there. I'm clicking my keyboard. My daughter is making it quite challenging. But yes, it really depends on the amount of effort you want to put into it. For me, if I'm doing a one-time quick cut and I know it'll be easier just to finish it on the back end, that's usually what I do. But if I know it's going to be, if it's going to be multiple batch, then I'll take an extra hour and really clean up that cut, because I know in the end it'll make it a lot nicer.
Yeah, just reducing the amount of angles and amount of programming that the G code has to do can help a lot with the time.
Hey. But for the most part, that's all I really wanted to show. I just know it's come up quite a bit on how to do this. Hang on a second. It's okay. It's okay. But I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, Don, do you have any questions with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, again, let's take a step back. Total newbie question. So the Makerverse software is essentially where you use whatever you want as a design tool and then import it into there to actually control the thing, or can you use some of these apps to just go direct? Like that's one of the things I've seen people mentioning, a lot of different software, and I'm like, okay, well, what's what, and what can I do with each one? But
so Yeah, that's a great question. So currently that's correct. You have to create it in another program. So like you have to create an SVG, an Illustrator, Inkscape. Then you have to convert that to G code. And that's what people use Easel or Carbide Create for, or some other ones. And then you take that G code and put it inside of MakerVerse, and MakerVerse actually runs the machine. So you've heard us talk a little bit about the updates to MakerVerse and stuff that's coming. And those are some of the things that we really want to combine into MakerVerse to make it more of a one-stop shop for running the M2, because MakerVerse has the ability to run other CNC machines too. It just doesn't have the capabilities to do G code creation yet, or like really basic file creation where you could do text and letters and stuff like that. So we want to get to that point, and that's in development right now. Those are the things that we really want to see in MakerVerse. But right now, you do currently have to go through that process.
Right. Okay. Well, so I got two questions about that came up. So first one's for what Lauren just showed us. So how does that relate to the Z-axis on that? Like, how do you decide, what's the positive and what's the negative space that you're cutting out, like for that little, fleur de lis or whatever the hell that thing was you just brought up? How do you tell it which part is the cut and which part is the negative space?
Lauren, you want to take that? You want to be a
yeah? So sorry, I'm just
juggling there. You're doing great. You're doing great, man. You're multitasking.
So
you're beast.
Really, when you import it into Easel, it'll automatically the black. So notoriously for the M2, you'll want to create images that are black and white, because you're not doing 3D relief. And if you're going to do anything like multiple relief, the best bet, especially if you're starting out, is to do in multiple layers and just add them to one another after you're done. So that's why I recommend whatever you're doing, finish it in black and white, just like I did. The Easel will automatically then take that black and white image that's an SVG and those nodes and build the cuts off of it. But in Easel, I don't know if you mind, I can go ahead and share again. Have you done anything with Easel yet, Don?
No, I like I said, I haven't even built my frame yet, honestly.
Oh, well, I can save you a lot of time and a whole lot of questions. Here we go. I'll do this. Here we go. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
All right. So you can see I have a whole ton of them. Each one of these that you see across the bottom I've created in one way or another, whether very complex or very simple. Okay. There is good things and bad things about Easel. So in Easel, when you create, unless you have Pro, there's very little things you can do outside of having multiple copies. Like, it doesn't let you control how much or which sections you cut. Now, as you can see, when you go into your cut, you have two options. So you select the item first. That's first and foremost. And you have shape, which tells you where you're putting it, right? Where it's located at, and then the size. And I'll go, I'm assuming you're in North America.
Yes. It's actually odd that you picked the Penn State logo, because I'm a huge Penn State guy. I went to school there.
Yeah, so I actually cut this out for my brother-in-law. So he's a big Penn State fan. So I'm just finishing that up for him for Christmas. But so as you can see, the shape, basically you set up the size and where it's located out on the board. Then you go into cut. This determines how deep of the cut you want it to be. I'm running MDF. I always add a 0.025 to the end of my cut to ensure I cut all the way through. Because a lot of times, like, I'll work to get scrap sheets or whatever it may be. It may be damaged. I can clean it up, but it may be slightly swollen or whatever the case may be. I want to make sure I cut all the way through. So I would always add 0.025 for a ½ inch, right? As you can see. And then you choose your type of cut path. Now, you can clear out a pocket, which you'll see that's what it does, right? You can cut on the shape path, which cuts directly on that line of nodes that you saw from the previous. You can cut outside, which cuts outside of that path, or you can cut inside. So you gotta, like, when you're cutting, you gotta decide how do you want it to look, right? And you can see as you select each one of those, it'll do that appropriately. Now, before you start cutting, if you're cutting it all the way out, especially for the big reason, the M2, all sheet goods sit on their side at a 15-degree angle. You will destroy your piece unless you add those tabs. So typically I add 1/4 inch tabs at an 1/8 inch high. I've never had an issue with that height. I've had guys go a little bit less, but just be very careful based upon how accurate Z-axis is, that you can pay the price and accidentally not create the tab, or they'll be super thick.
Yeah, so Don, tabs hold your material on
Right.
there.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
you can see where each one of my yellow, you see the yellow spots, or where each one of the tabs are. It's very simple, very intuitive. You just add more tabs and adjust them around. Easel free it has its issues. Every time you add a tab, watch what it does to the other tabs. It bounces them around, which becomes quite annoying if you wanted to keep them where they were. But it is what it is. So be careful adjusting the number. What I typically do is I look across my piece and I say, where do I need tabs at, right? So I know this earpiece right here, it needs to have its own tab. So I count that as 1. I know this is going to be off to the side, maybe a weak point. I'll add another here. I got some pieces in here, 2 or 3, 4, 5, and I work my way around 6, 7 top and bottom, and like 8 over here. So that's how I came to that number of 8. I basically just count beforehand before I add the tabs, and I move them all at one time. Because if you get to the end and you realize, oh, I need an extra tab, guess what happens? You bump that number up and all of them move, and you got to do it all over again. So,
so you can move those tabs around individually just by clicking on them. You'll get a little note and move it.
Comes up, and I can slide them around.
Right, but can't you just select, like, say you add, say you need 8, maybe 9. You put in 10. Can you remove one or?
No, so that's the challenge. I can't get rid of it.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it's a weakness of the software. That's where I'm saying, like, do your counting ahead of time. These are tips and tricks that I've made hundreds of these. It's just a little tip and trick. Now,
all right.
With that in mind, when you're done, all you got to do is, for the M2, I see this question come up at least once a week on the web or on the Facebook page, is there's a lot of people that get it and they're like, hey, it's not cutting where I tell it to cut. Understand, home for the M2 is 0, 0. So I'm going to zoom out. Well, I kind of zoom out. Let's see here. Doing everything by hand. One hand here. Hey, it's okay. It's okay. If 0, 0. So you see it in the bottom left corner. That is your home for the M2. If you want to start, so depending on, for me, right? Depending on where you want to start that cut, that's where you tell it to go. So if you're trying to start your cut, like, hey, you want to position your home is dead center of the piece before you start the cut. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
Then before you start and before you export that code, you need to go up here and put 0 and 0. Do not get wrapped up in the fact that it is off the board, because you've already got it designed. Nothing else has changed. You've got it in position. You know where it's at. And then lastly, you can go up here to project and download G-code, or machine, general settings, and download G-code. And you'll see it pops up down here, and you just save in the file and move it to the computer that's running your machine. Or if it's already on your computer that's running the machine, just run the G-code in Makerverse.
Gotcha.
So inside of Makerverse, I like to set my files to do exactly like Lauren did inside of Easel or whatever program you're using, to make it 0, 0 in the center, because you can use the work offsets inside of Makerverse to say, hey, I want a temporary 0 to be over here in this left corner or down here in the right corner or something like that. So you can move where it's actually going to cut with your work offsets. So if you might want to cut the first one in the center, but then you can make another work offset and cut another one in like the top right corner and the top left corner, and kind of cut them in different areas as well. So you're not just locked in for that center forever. You can move around and adjust and make temporary work offsets inside of Makerverse, because that's just telling the machine where it's temporarily going to have 0, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
In Makerverse, what he's saying, you have a work 0. You will have a work 0 versus machine 0. That work 0. So before I start, typically I'm running on a sheet of MDF, 1/2-inch plywood, or whatever it may be, right? I will determine the size that I'm cutting. Then I will determine, hey, I need this much space. I got this blank spot on the board. I'll measure it out with my giant T-square used for drywall. I'll make a mark, move the machine to that location, and then 0 out my work 0. And I'm prepared to cut.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you're kind of making the two softwares jive with each other to
Yes.
give them
If you're
a
trying to-
common
I see
point of
people-
interest.
Right. I see people all the time trying to figure out in Easel how far off center they want to cut, and then telling it just to cut from there. Oh, that's brutal. I wouldn't even try. Like that's the hardest way to do it. The other thing, there's a couple of things that like I'm really hoping comes out in Makerverse in the future that you cannot do. And that's it. You cannot rotate the piece in Makerverse. Once you save that G code, other softwares you can rotate the cut once it's already in Makerverse. It cannot do that. You can't adjust.
So you have to do that here.
anything. Yes, you have to do it here. So for me, I don't know if I have it here. I think I do. Yes. So this is my niece's name, Eva Reese. Like all these letters that I jigsawed in, knowing that I wanted to cut in the smallest area possible. I can't do that once it gets into Makerverse. I've got to do it here.
Gotcha. Okay.
So-
Yeah.
And that's because Makerverse can't make G code creation. So if you changed it, that would be editing and modifying the G code, and it doesn't have that yet.
Right.
So
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. So well, go ahead, because this is a separate question. Something different. Go ahead.
The other thing you can do, depending on how you like to do it. So depending on the situation, sometimes I will do this actually in Inkscape. I'll arrange them in Inkscape so I can get very precise and then save them into the file and move them over. But it's totally up to you. The only thing you should note, you see how I have this jigsaw. You remember earlier when I was doing my name and I unioned them. Once you create a union and you tie them all together as one, you can't move them individually.
Gotcha.
So,
right.
but if you're moving them, if you're creating an SVG from Inkscape, do not union them. Keep them all separate. They will pop up separately and you can move them separately.
Right. It's
So
kind of like
just something to think
grouping.
about.
It's kind of like grouping and flattening in Photoshop or whatever. Like once you flatten, it's
Exactly.
all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. It's exactly, yeah. So it's just something to think about. And the only reason why I like Inkscape is because it's free. It's got a lot of
Right.
shortcomings, but the ability to create an SVG for free and make it look pretty nice is really handy. And I mean, I'll give you an example. So I just finished, I got to cut this afternoon for my father-in-law, big Jeep guy, has a Jeep Gladiator. So I went and searched trying to get an accurate depiction of a Jeep Gladiator and couldn't track it down. Using shapes, just using that path menu, I created this with a high level of precision with almost 0 nodes. It'll cut very, very cleanly. If you run into jagged cuts or issues, especially if you're keeping under 35 inches per minute with a sharp bit and you're having issues, 99 times out of 100, it is because your file is not great. There's a lot of people that get upset their cuts aren't clean. Well, their files they put into the machine just are not pretty. They have a lot of issues. And it's just that same garbage in, garbage out principle.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, Lauren, did you ever think of opening up your, a YouTube channel and start recording each of these things?
I did
I would
actually
subscribe
I
right
actually
now.
got a camera. I'm just not really my real problem right now is I just don't have the time. Well, I was going to do it before the holidays. Yeah, our business that we started has it's just been ridiculous. I can't even explain how much I've been.
Yeah,
cutting.
you said last week you were saying how your wife slave driving you.
Yeah. So, it's just been a lot. I know there is a lot of Inkscape tutorials out there. I thought about bringing it up and just adding it to the page. Because really it's just a matter of, I want to give back to the community. The community's they're pretty amazing people and everybody's willing to help each other out. I just feel bad when I see them going on there and spending $5, $10 on an SVG that may or may not be that great when they can make it themselves in under 10 minutes.
Well, that's kind of where I'm at. Like I said, I haven't put my gear together yet. And I'm like, okay, the last thing I want to do is, there's so many different softwares out there. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what I like yet. So I'm trying to get the, free or cheap and then, see what I like before I can start, doing the free trials and stuff like that before I spend any money on anything. So.
No, absolutely. There is one more thing I can show you. If you decide that you want to do something manually, so I'll show you the Jeep, how I got there, right? So I actually started with this image here. And you can see, and I did the same bitmap method with trace bitmap. The issue is I started digging into it. There's just issues with it's not symmetrical and it's not that clean. So what I ended up doing is you can actually take this button right here on the left.
Can you switch your monitor?
Yeah, I was gonna say we're still seeing
We
the
only
other.
see Easel
Oh,
on your other monitor.
I'm sorry. Stop share. Let me share it properly.
Yeah, like the
I clicked the wrong
you
one.
got dual monitor setup.
Yeah, I do. Sorry, that's my fault.
That's
Can
fine.
y'all see it now?
Yes, there we go.
I'm sorry. So this is the original image. I'll start back from the beginning. This is the original Jeep image that I took because I did a lot of comparisons and I was like, I just don't like it. And as I started, there's a lot of fading. The computer was having trouble getting it precise. So if you take this button right here, it's called draw Bezier curves and straight lines. What you're doing is you're basically drawing the nodes. So you can then click on it and start drawing across your image as you go. And notoriously, if it's too much, don't get too wrapped up in making it perfect in the original design. Because as you can see, I'm just kind of going for it. And then when I get done, it'll create that image. I'll then fill it with a color, make it a little less so I can see it. Then I can click on this second up here on the top left, back to the node editor. And now I can click on these nodes and straighten them up. And especially if I'm doing just straight rounds, I'll select the whole thing, like every one of them, and then click this one up here, and it'll just round it off.
Nice.
So then I go back in there and I say, okay, where's my issues at? You see what I'm saying? And I go back in there and delete nodes that I shouldn't have clicked in the first place. So I can see this one's a problem. And the good thing is you can absolutely zoom way in, right? And I can delete nodes that I don't need, slide them around, get them right where I want them, adjust ever so slightly. And you can see just like that, I've got the curve almost perfectly the way I want it. So like I said, if you're trying to create a really solid image that you know, hey, I'm going to use this quite a bit. I want it to be perfect. I want it to be just right. I'm going to do that. Now, the other thing is, if you're trading something that you want it symmetrical side to side, now obviously this isn't perfect, right? What I'll end up doing is I will zoom, let me zoom back out, is I will actually find the center of the image, create two nodes at the center, and I'll delete the rest. And I'll explain why. When I delete those, then I collect these two nodes that are at the center, and I'm going to click this little corner. I'm going to double click it or click it once. And now I have a straight line in the center. I'll then take those two nodes, go over here to the align button, which is down here. You can see align and distribute, which I have up here. I'm going to put them on the same vertical path. Those two. Now I just take that same piece, I copy and paste it, and then flip it. And then when I connect them, they're exactly symmetrical. I select both, path and union, and now they're exactly same side by side.
Yeah.
So now when I create
that's a great
it,
trick.
it's obviously very jagged, right? So
Yeah, I love it. It's compensation for the artistically retarded. I love it.
because I struggled to get like both sides exactly the same. And I was like, what am I doing? I can just flip it and make it the same, and it's good to go. And you can see, if I go up here, here's the final image, right? So if I click on this nodes, you can see it's very few nodes in it. It's very clean. I went back to the actual, like I took a bunch of different images, overlaid it, and you can see it's almost perfect. So just an idea.
That's great, Lauren.
Yeah. So I've got to cut that out this afternoon. It's my way of compensating because I can't draw very well. But give me a computer, I can make it happen.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
So like I said, it's far from great, but it'll get it done. When you get into your final image and your final cuts, the last thing I can recommend is take the time in your cuts or before you start the cut to come down here to this measurement tool on the bottom left and measure your smallest point. Now, obviously this is a pretty giant piece, right? But you can see this is my smallest point, and it is giving me a problem here. It's 0.91 inches side to side, just that spot here. Just under is 0.69 inches. So I basically measure my weak points. Is it going to give me problems? Does that make sense? Half inch. Just over a half inch. So because you should know, unless your bit is brand new, if you get under 1/4 of an inch, tear out is very common, especially because most of us are cutting with plywood. You'll literally cut and knock layers straight off, and then you're going back with wood putty to clean things up. So specifically I don't know if y'all see an easel, but can y'all see easel right now?
Yeah.
This part right here, the mouth, yep, it jacked me up. It tore out. I tried to make it too sharp and ended up having to go back with putty and clean it up. But it's one of those things, you can absolutely fix it. You can absolutely do it. In the past, I've actually even cut sections off and just cut that little piece right there, cleaned it up, and reinforced with like a little bit of wire or something, and attached it back with some CA glue, and it works just fine. You can hide your mistakes a lot of times, but yeah, just check yourself, and especially in corners like that, you'll really appreciate taking the time to get it right. But anyway, another little tip there. Sorry, I think about these things as I'm doing it, but I don't think about it when I'm not actually, when I'm trying to explain it. I forget that I do these things naturally, just over time.
Well, that's awesome, Lauren. Yeah, thanks a lot for going through that and showing us some tips and tricks. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna cut this out too, Don. You're
That's
asking.
Okay.
And Lauren, if you don't mind, yeah, I'll cut that part out and post it on our
Absolutely. I keep thinking about it. I just haven't had the time. As you can see, I'm dual tasking right now, being Mr. Mom. But Don, if you want to, I'm on that Facebook page. I don't comment too often. A lot of times Casey and them will comment a lot more.
Yeah.
But you can find me, same name. If you have questions, I usually respond pretty quickly. Shoot me a text, or if you're trying to create files or you have questions, and I'm happy to respond.
Yeah, cool.
There's not a whole lot of Mike Garzas out there, so yeah, he is very, very helpful in getting things solved. But sometimes users like me or Casey or Drew will get back to you a little faster in a quick pinch, or just trying to figure something out.
Yeah,
so that's what we're here for the community.
So Drew, I had one.
Whoop.
Yeah, I had one more question for you, Drew. So I guess Patrick was saying, so the new software is coming out sometime after January-ish, like after the first of the year.
Yes.
And they said that you're going to need, even if you're one of the smaller frames, you would need the longer chains to take advantage of the new software.
Not for the mini frame. So if you are doing a 4x4 frame, no, but you could still use it, but it's going to be, we're in the process of upgrading all of our chains in that process to 15 feet, just to make it easier for everybody. And we're in the middle of that process right now, but we have a lot of units already produced. We're a small company, so we produce in bulk. So we're kind of in the process of doing that. What we actually want to do is actually have the chains marked.
He said that. Yeah,
to make it way easier for calibration. So yeah, we are working on that. But that's what that calibration guide that I mentioned earlier, it kind of is the beginnings of what that will be. So it kind of walks you through how to mark that on your chains to kind of line up where your centers are.
Yeah, the reason I asked is, like I said, I haven't taken it out of the box yet. I opened it up, when it came, oh my God, look at this.
Yeah.
But I haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so and I'm out of town starting this weekend until after the first of the year. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll order them now if they're necessary, and then I'll have them here, when when I get back in January. But if it's not 100% necessary, then, you know, I'll just go what I have until because I'm going to start with the mini frame. And then
Okay.
as I make more room in the garage, I can expand it. So
yeah, you're fine then. Yeah, you can use the 11 foots with the mini chain. The mini chain is even going to be, they're 11 foot already. So they're going to be more than enough. You'll have extra that you'll have to like tie up or take off with a chain a chain breaker or something like that anyway. So yeah, you're totally fine. And I don't have an exact timeline on the software either. So I'm not sure exactly when that is going to launch, but sometime in the first quarter.
Don, you also don't have to download the latest software. Like most users use 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch all the time. And doing that, they don't need to change their Z axis that often. I go through all kinds of thicknesses of wood. With that in mind, the latest 1.1 point, is it 5? I thought they have
so 5 is the beta. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So like
3 is the 1.13 is the last stable version that I would recommend you use.
So I'm using 1.13, but the beta is out there free to download because Makerverse is free. There's some glitches in the system that I find incredibly annoying. And so Makerverse, because it's free, that's one of the amazing things about it is you can absolutely go back and download the older versions. So don't get too wrapped up on that. And that's one of those things, like if you're having issues with the software, give me or Casey or one of them, shoot us a text on Facebook. These are things we're just passionate about it. And yeah, if you got questions, just reach us up. Drew, I was going to mention something I saw online the other day. I have on Facebook, this place that's called Shop Hacks or whatever it is. You know, it's just unique tips and tricks. And somebody had a CNC that I was like, man, MakerMade really needs to jump on this. And it's basically making a smaller CNC with 3D printed parts, almost entirely 3D printed parts. And the only thing you had to buy was it 4 or 5 the 1/2 inch steel pipes that you can get from Home Depot for like 15 or 20 bucks a piece. And then stepper motors and the belt
control board,
the gantry, and it made a gantry CNCs. I don't know if you've seen them before, but
I've seen some similar stuff like that. Yeah, kind of like Bob CNC type of like complete DIY kits. Yeah.
What I was surprised is you could build it for under $500 gantry CNC for a
That's awesome.
3 foot by 3 foot for a gantry. I was surprised, but obviously if you didn't have a 3D printer, you could buy it, but then it was like $750. But it was like one of those things I was thinking, like, if we did like a community project for guys to kind of like, how do you 3D print? Because I mean, obviously y'all do the 3D printers as well. Moving from 3D printer to CNC by printing the parts. I thought that was would be a very unique way to get to it, to tie the two machines together. I didn't know if that was
awesome.
something that you and Patrick are even considering for the future of 3D printing a CNC machine.
So we 3D print prototypes all the time for stuff. So what was that called? Do you remember? You said it was like Open Shop. I'll go check it out.
Yeah, it's the Facebook group is Shop Hacks, I think. Let me search real quick. I know it's one of the groups I'm in. Yeah, it's Shop Hacks is the group. And let me see if I can go to it because it was recent. There's always unique stuff in there. Like, for example, like I found one of them, the guy showed, you go on Amazon, you can buy a 22 long rifle shell holder for $2.99, and it holds like, I think it's like 100 rounds, but it's absolutely the perfect size to hold all your bits.
So then you can have them all like aligned.
Yeah, so I have it's a giant square. I keep all my bits lined up because you think about like your bit cases, they're giant. Yeah, so like
you're trying to dig through and find the right bits.
Yeah, so it's all lined up, and I have a lot of bits, but it doesn't even fill the whole thing. But it's just like unique things like that guys will show, and it's just really, there's always somebody very ingenious out there. Yeah, here it is. It's called, I don't know if I can show you to the camera. I'll see if you can.
I can go to the group and check it out. Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah. It's just the edges are like that, and it just like holds the router. Right on.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
3D printed. You basically buy the belts and the stepper motors.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's called Shop Hacks is the group. And when I saw it, where did he say it? It's somewhere in the comments. Oh, it's introduction to the MPCNC V1 engineering. I just thought it was like a unique take on it, and I was like, I know MakerMade has I think a better community to really turn this on its end. But yeah, very unique idea. Because I think there is room in MakerMade for a gantry CNC. I think that is something that we could absolutely. Come on, you can focus.
Yeah, you went all blur. It's all right.
Yeah, I think it's because it's stuck focusing really close.
Yeah, it's fun.
But anyway, yeah, I just think that's something that'd be unique. Because even mine, like me and Casey, like I now have a gantry CNC to fill the gap on the really fine.
Right, the really high detailed stuff. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, and really it's more the V carve, but at the end of the day, it's hard to beat MakerMade when it comes to large cutouts. It's very hard to beat it. And a lot of people don't realize that, but yeah, it's just something to think about. I don't know. I'd definitely be down to get on it.
We have been thinking about it.
Yeah.
So,
As it is, I was going to reach out to Patrick because I'm looking to get, I had a really cheap G-Tech 3D printer that I got from Drew. Placid, not you, Drew, but
yeah, I remember he was talking about sending out printers.
Yeah.
Does it work?
It worked for a minute, and then the power box blew, and then I don't have a 3D printer. I was going to talk to Patrick to see what kind of deals y'all had on y'all's. And then, but I just need, basically there's a lot of things, a lot of prototypes, the sanding mechanism and that kind of stuff that I developed for the jigsaw, just all those things, just adding them to the team and really creating more platforms. But yeah, and I saw this 3D printed CNC, and it says it's not as accurate as a production level CNC, but I saw some of the cuts and I was like, okay, it's not that bad. Like it definitely does okay. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, right on. Well, I'll go check it out for sure. Thanks for the tip.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, well, Don, you got any more questions? More stuff? Yeah.
I think that's
alrighty.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, Don.
Well, thanks a lot.
When you're building, if you got questions, Casey's a great resource. Have you watched Two Tankards?
I some of it, yeah. I actually sent some stuff to Casey this week about the I really like his frame he's working on.
Frame, yeah.
And there was some geometry that was kind of weird to me because when with the kit you've got those brackets that put the everything's at that angle, and then he's got his pivot at the top, so it kind of comes up and everything's on the same plane, whereas there's like 9 inches between the top frame and the canvas. So I was like, okay, well, that's not on the same plane, it's parallel to each other. And he's like, no, that doesn't matter as long as they need to be on the same plane. So if the whole thing is on one pivot at the top instead of I'm not explaining it well, but I
think I see what you mean. Yeah.
The offset of the motors versus the stock is what you're concerned about, right?
Right.
Yeah. So if they're off a little bit, if they're not on the same plane and they're off a little bit, as long as the angle is the same.
Yeah, that's what Casey said. Yeah, that's what Casey said. But like, so when I looked at it, I was like, okay, well, that seems to be an important thing because otherwise you wouldn't have those brackets with the angles already in there. And then it's like, well, okay, but that's, that still doesn't make sense because it's not, you've got that 9 or 10 inches in between the two for, when you build the frame, the top beam versus the canvas. So,
yeah. Well, he showed me, he hadn't showed it all yet because we chat quite frequently, and he's got newer brackets that he's actually 3D printed because he reached out for some brackets and they were like back ordered and things.
Right.
So he's actually 3D printing some brackets to test.
Right.
So there is going to be some offset there. Those planes will be offset at the same angle, obviously, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, because I'm really interested in putting that pivot point at the top because everybody else wants to put it against the wall. I want to swing it up like that. I think, Lauren, you sent me that video last week with the guy who hooked up like a garage door opener.
Hold on the air.
And and it goes right up. Yeah. So that for my garage, considering all the other power tools that are in there on wheels that move, I rearrange everything all the time. If I can, when I'm not using it, fold it up into the ceiling instead of against the wall, then, that makes my life a lot easier.
Yeah, I'm absolutely one of those guys. I find it very challenging working out of a 2-car garage with a large machine and ability to swing it, especially if it's a good day outside. I can roll it outside, blow it off, clean it up, bring it back inside. It's just a lot of things, loading, unloading it, being able to turn it around to load it and unload it. Yeah, it's just, for me, I love the traditional frame. There is a lot of back and drawbacks to it. But the original frame still has a lot of validity if you want to keep it mobile.
Right. Well, like I said, until I get my feet under me with all this stuff, because there's so much to learn, I want to keep it as stock as possible. I don't want to reinvent any wheels. And then, once I know what I don't know, then I can start tweaking things,
Go back and making changes. Yeah, for sure.
The big thing, pay attention to your machine. Love your machine. I feel like there's
watch it.
Yeah,
just
watch it
don't
closely.
love your machine.
Once a week, somebody's like, "Well, I went inside or I did something, and now my machine tore itself apart." And I'm like, "What were you doing?" And also, when you're testing it, you can pop those chains off those gears very easily. Don't be afraid to move those gears off, because that's how they once it gets taut and you see, you have a problem. Yeah, it'll rip itself apart because those motors can lift almost 1,000 pounds.
Yeah,
So,
they're the same types of motors that are in ATM machines. So to hold the money mechanism to prevent people from prying into ATM machines. So they're pretty powerful worm gear.
Yeah, that was one of my before you put it together things was an emergency stop button somehow to power everything. So
yeah, I mean, just pull the plug.
Yeah, I flip a switch on mine. I have it all plugged into the same power tap that I can flip.
Yeah, exactly. It has the same thing. I have a power block that I just turn the switch off and it kills it. But I've luckily not, knock on wood, I've not had any issues where I really thought it was going to tear itself apart.
That's good.
But
all right, Don.
Well,
yeah,
guys,
thanks a
thank
lot,
you.
Lauren. Thank you so much for going through that SVG tutorial. I'll get that on there. And then, Don, if I don't see you next week, I'll be cheering with you on the other side of the TV in the Arkansas Penn State game. So that'll be great.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. I hope they play like the beginning of the season, not the end.
Yeah. We hope that the Razorbacks do as well. So we'll see.
All right, guys.
Yeah. Well, y'all take care and have a happy holidays.
You too. Bye.
You too.
See ya.